Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming. I appreciate you all. Whether you're watching this stream on YouTube or on Rumble, at the beginning of this stream, I have to make a confession that I feel like in the past few weeks, I was not doing enough on Syriana Analysis by hosting experts. And when I host experts, basically, I should just research a little bit about the background of the guest and then prepare some questions and then sit back and listen and then formulate some sub questions from or follow-up questions from the answers of the guest. But when I prepare for the live streaming myself and I'm covering different issues and giving my opinions, it takes a longer time to prepare. Actually, you have to read lots of articles, summarize them, and also try to figure out what type of comments you have to make and analyze, right? So I find this more I would say compelling and fun, and also although it takes a longer time to prepare, but I feel and I think that this is the best way to go. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to host guests and experts. In the contrary, I would love to have guests, and I'm sending invitations also to some experts to join us on Syriana Analysis soon, and inshallah soon there will be more brilliant guests who themselves want to come and comment and analyze on different issues. I also want to make another point, which is personal. I started my journalistic career in 2012. I was just a kiddo, and I have made lots of mistakes. Even recently, I made mistakes. Every day I made mistakes, and I learn from my mistakes. And I'm very open to criticism. And when I say criticism, my criticism means somebody trying to really genuinely and with a good heart and a good will to give some, let's say, an observation or a criticism about something that I said or something that I did or some place that I've been there, or different things. And also in the online sphere here, if I say something or if I have made a point which is incorrect, or probably I'm relying on certain style and some people think that's not the best style for me, for example. Okay, I understand that. However, I have never said before that I'm neutral. I have never said that I'm objective 100%. I'm subjective. I have opinions, and sometimes I have strong opinions about certain things. It depends on the topic. Like when I'm speaking about, let's say, what happened in Nagorno-Karabakh for the Armenian people, I would definitely have a stronger opinion about it because I'm myself ethnic Armenian and I have a long history. We have a long history with the Azeris and the Turkish people and the Ottomans before that. There was a, let's say, not so pleasant history in the region, and I don't want my people to go through similar experiences in 21st century. And similarly in Syria, when the ISIS Nusra hordes were occupying half the country and killing the people, I had strong opinions, and sometimes I had, some people call it radical opinions. I don't know. But it all depends on the situation, depends on the context. I never claim to be neutral. I will never be neutral. So just a disclaimer, if you're new on this channel, I'm not going to be neutral. I cannot be neutral, especially now when it comes to the war of extermination against the Palestinians. I can't and I will not. So if somebody wants to criticize this is his opinion. I'm not going to accept it and I'm not going to adopt it. If somebody wants me to be neutral, I will not be neutral. I remember in one of my first TV interviews, in 2013, actually I started, my first interview on Russia Today was 2012. And so in 2013, I was still new. And some colleague who was also Syrian, and he had a better position, let's say, than myself and more experience than myself. And he criticized me and he said that I have to use neutral terms when I'm on TV and analyzing a situation. So he asked me to use the term rebels for these terrorists in Syria. And I thought about it, and I couldn't do it back then. I couldn't call them rebels because rebellion means there is a severe injustice against this person, and this person is fighting for a cause, and for a just cause, for a cause that could bring equality or could bring justice, right? So when I see that somebody's carrying an arm and calling for the extermination of, let's say, some religious groups and wants to establish, between brackets, Islamic Caliphate in Syria, I can't call these people rebels, right? So I never called them rebels. I will not call them rebels, and not in the past and not in the future. So I'm very stubborn about these things. Call me an old-fashioned, call me an old school. I don't really find myself comfortable in using the politically correct terms in order to advance my career. I don't care about it. I think what I'm doing here on Syriana Analysis is good enough for me and for the audience and for the community that I created. And wherever I go, I find people recognizing me. Of course, it's a really difficult to be known by people, because some people just hate you for your political opinions, and they approach you in a harassing way, and some people love you, and you can't really find this middle ground when you put your face on YouTube and analyze political issues. Most people are not really mature enough to engage, let's say, in constructive dialogue when they see you in the streets. So it's a difficult task as well for me. In any ways, also many times I see people telling me in the comments below that thank you so much that you opened our eyes for lots of things going on in Syria, in the Middle East, in Ukraine, in Azerbaijan, Karabakh, Armenia, etc. So this criticism that I received, that I have to be neutral to reach to broader audience, that's incorrect, because there are so many people coming and telling me that only a few months ago, a few weeks ago, they had a completely different opinion, and now they have opened their eyes. So this is my style, and I'm always adapting. But there are certain principles and certain headlines that I don't cross for myself first, and for my integrity. I feel like I'm going to be compromised if I start using the politically correct terminologies that these people want me to use, or to become neutral. So the rant is over, guys. This is the beginning of today's live streaming. So thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you're doing well today. And yesterday we spoke about the neocons who are going to be part of the Trump administration, and more nominees and selectees have been announced since yesterday, and one of which is the Ministry of Defense. So the Secretary of Defense of the US has been selected by Donald Trump. And he's going to be, it's really surprising for many people. I don't think it's a big surprise. I think that you have to see the context, and you have to see the job of the Secretary of Defense in the US. And you also have to know the affiliation of the person, the loyalty to Donald Trump, and also his overall, let's say, convictions, both politically and ideologically. That's also very important. So Donald Trump, he picked someone who is basically a commentator on Fox News. He's a conservative commentator. And many people in Washington, D.C. are shocked that he picked him. And he doesn't have so much of military experience, or in defense, or in wars, but he has basically been selected by Donald Trump. P.T. Hegseth. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name correct, but this is his photo. I'm going to show you his photo. I think that so this is the guy who has been selected by Donald Trump, and many people in Washington, D.C. aren't happy with it, especially the bureaucrats, because he's outside of the DOD, right? He's just a political commentator, and the military personnel see themselves like they deserve this more. So there is someone, his name is Eric Edelman, and he served as the Pentagon's top policy official during the Bush administration. And he was not really happy with this appointment, and he said Trump puts the highest value on loyalty. And he says that it appears that one of the main criteria that is being used is how well do people defend Donald Trump on television. So in his opinion, that this guy doesn't have so much experience, but Donald Trump wants to appoint people who are loyal to him and defended him in the past. But Marco Rubio, for example, he was ranting against Donald Trump, right? So this argument, I don't think this is really legitimate. And one of the defense industry lobbyists in Washington, D.C. So he's a defense military lobbyist in US. Basically, he's one of the people who is part of the military industrial complex, and he has an invested interest in expanding the scope of the American wars around the world to make profits. So he talked with Politico, but on the condition of anonymity, and he said, "Who the F is this guy?" He says that he never heard of this guy, so it's also new for him. This personality hasn't come to his attention before, and he said that he had hoped for someone who actually had an extensive background in defense. That would be a good start, but Trump didn't basically satisfy their apparently fantasies. So the pick will do little to quell fears inside the Pentagon and beyond that. Trump, who jousted with his own defense secretary's plans, this time to install a loyalist who will unquestionably carry out his policies. So it seems that Donald Trump in his past administration, he learned something from the people who betrayed him, and I'm not giving him any credit, right? Just saying that this time Trump wants to bring people in his administration who are completely loyal to him and do not stab him in the back, especially after the last term when it was over. Many of the people who were inside his administration or were allied with him stabbed him in the back, and they wanted him to go to jail, for example. So this Trump's return is expected to bring a collective rollback of Biden administration policies, likely reinstating a ban. So this is the issue in the United States is so ridiculous from both sides, conservatives and so-called conservatives and so-called liberals, that the entire this dilemma now in the DOD, that Trump appointed someone who is a war hawk, basically, and as the chief of the DOD. But the concern among the DOD bureaucrats is not that he is war hawk. The main concern is that this guy is going to ban on transgender troops, ending abortion travel policies, reigniting battles over bases named for Confederate figures, slashing diversity programs, and the use of troops on US soil against civil unrest and his political enemies. So basically, this guy is the enemy of the wokeism, and Trump appointed him in the DOD to clean the house from inside, from the LGBTQ and diversity and all this transgenderism in the American army. This is what they are concerned about. This is an active and real discussion and debate now among the experts in the DOD and the bureaucrats in the DOD, right? It's not about whether he wants to go to war against Iran, whether he wants to go to war against Russia, whether he wants to go to war against China, etc. No. All these things are irrelevant for them. They care about the diversity, the LGBTQ, and the transgenderism in the US military. That's what they are concerned about. Now, we have a personality. His name is Paul Rickhoff. He is the founder of Independent Veterans of America. He posted on X and he said, Hegseth, this new chief of the DOD, is undoubtedly the least qualified nominee for Secretary of Defense in American history and most overtly political. Brace yourself, America, he says. He also continues saying, a highly effective and ferocious media, culture, and political warrior for MAGA, and beyond loyal to and trusted by Trump. So he also sending the signal that Trump only picked him because he's a trusted person and he will not stab him in the back. But then you have the enemies of the Republicans, and from the Democrats, he's the top Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee. So in the Congress, you have different committees, right? Specialized in different topics, one of which is basically House Armed Services Committee. His name is Representative Adam Smith. He's from Washington. He is concerned about a Pentagon chief without extensive relationships with allies at a time when the US has a lot of irons in the fire in Asia, Europe, and the Middle East. So he's concerned that this the new DOD chief doesn't have so much contacts and relationship with the allies, for example, in Far East Asia, in Taiwan, in Japan, in South Korea, in Ukraine, in Great Britain, in Western Europe in general, in the Middle East, etc. So he's not well known to the allies of the US around the world. He says, I see no evidence that this person has relationships whatsoever with our overseas partners. How is he going to do when working on the various coalitions that we have? I mean, maybe, just maybe, it would be an amazing idea if the US stops opening new bases around the world, new command centers to subjugate the rest of the world and try to suppress the rise of other economies, try to destabilize other countries, or wage wars or conspiracies or coup d'etats or covert operations, this and that, right? If the United States doesn't have 800 military bases around the world, you don't need to have this type of relationship with your allies. If you treat everybody as an equal, as an ally, or even your rivals, if you treat them respectfully as peers, you don't need to install your military bases on their borders, because installing your military bases and directing your missiles on your enemies means that you are directly threatening them with military response if their political, economic, or other types of policies do not meet the standards of the US or the interests of the US. So this is intimidation, basically, and this is what empires basically do. Now, the new head of the DoD, Hegseth, he was graduated from Princeton University and then joined the Army National Guard, and he served in Iraq and Afghanistan and earned 2 Bronze Stars. I don't know what the Bronze Stars or these medals mean, and I don't know what type of achievements he have done in Iraq and Afghanistan and how many civilians he killed to deserve this medal, but he has been honored before. Now, despite all this dilemma and all this discussion and debate in the US that, oh my God, this is what a big surprise. I'm shocked. Why is this guy was selected by Donald Trump? I mean, basically because first, he is a war hawk, he's a neocon, he's an arch Zionist, and he's also a war hawk. And we have to understand that this type of selections are aimed at certain policies and aimed at engineering certain policies. Like Brian Barletic, he says Trump appoints neocon warmonger Pete Hegseth as US Secretary of Defense. It would be hard to imagine a cabinet more inclined toward warmongering and war abroad while scapegoating at home. Instead of investing in the United States as most Trump supporters deeply desired, neither Americans nor the world as a whole is voting their way out of American meddling and wars. Only by creating an international system that fully confines US foreign policy and the interests driving it through the defense of international information space, protection from US interference, military deterrence, and economic interdependence or independence, will peace and stability be obtained from the West for the global West. I mean, this is an amazing point. I think that so many times also this is the same thing happens all the time in Syria. People wait and expect a goodwill gesture to come from the US or the circumstances to change for us to understand if the next Trump administration or the previous administration or the administration after 4 years could be less of a hawkish, let's say, in Syria. Or maybe Trump could lift the sanctions, or maybe Trump could withdraw the troops, which Biden refused to do. And before that, Trump's bureaucrats in his administration also lobbied against this type of decision, right? So people, in my opinion, in the global south or the rest of the world, especially in the Middle East, North Africa, we are usually waiting for changes to happen in the US to see if this will be in our favor or not. So the initiation is always expected from the United States, basically, right? So the initiation has to come from the global south, from the Middle East, from the people who have seen this type of wars from the US and meddling. So the priority, in my opinion, for the global south to create a network of alliances with state and non-state actors, economic integration with larger economies, especially with China, India, Brazil, South Africa, Russia, any country, basically, even Western countries, if they want to have good relationship, it's completely fine. The problem is, for example, if you want to have a good relationship with Europe, the Europeans always listen to the Americans. And if the Americans say, no, you can't have a diplomatic relationship like with Syria, then you don't have a diplomatic relationship with Syria or economic relationship. When the United States says, no, we have to continue our maximum pressure on Iran or maximum pressure on Syria, we have to impose sanctions, we cannot accept this or that, Europeans are going to follow it. This is the unfortunate truth. So basically, we have to be open for any sort of cooperation with the West and the East. But the East is more, let's say, or the rest of the world outside this bubble of the rules-based international order are willing to deal with you the way you are. They don't want to impose their will. They don't want to impose basically their the system of governance. They don't want to impose their values, their ideologies on you. They just want to make a business to profit. And if they do business, you're also doing business, right? So it's mutually beneficial for both sides. So there has to be parallel international financial systems, especially through BRICS, to organize these transactions between the rising powers outside the SWIFT system. There has to be a certain level of de-dollarization for the dollar to lose some of its value, so the United States cannot weaponize it against its rivals. And secondly, there has to be certain deterrence. And this is something that I spoke yesterday. Like, the United States cannot go to war against China. Today, I'm going to show you one of the videos of the chief of the DOD who thinks that the United States could lose the war against China, and they cannot go to direct war against Russia or any other nuclear country. So the United States, unfortunately, left no room for other countries but to have deterrent weapons to immunize themselves from certain for this type of interventions, right? So there has to be a certain level of deterrence and certain level of economic independence, and the economic integration with other economies, with growing economies, in order to facilitate the growth of your GDP, and also the reconstruction, basically, of the countries that were decimated by the American wars, and in this case, especially Syria. Now, Pete Hegseth, he's unfortunately not only a war hawk, he is, he's a ideologically very radical Zionist. And he believes that, so this is on Fox News, he basically believes that the Bible gives Israel he says that the Bible gives the Jewish people the entire Palestinian territories, which they call it now Israel. And he believes that the international community agreed that Israel should be a Jewish homeland. And it's basically, the argument is not based on international law or any type of regulations, right? But it's based on religion. So he says, if you open the Bible, then Israel, current Israel or current Palestine belongs to Israel, because that's what is written in the Bible. So my question here is really, like, if you say something like this, then what's the use of international law? Let's suppose you're right. What's the use of international law? Why do we have even international law? Why do we have even borders and demarcations and UN Security Council resolutions, this and that? If anyone and everyone can bring his Bible and say this land belongs to me, then we don't need international law, right? So let's go back to the Bible. If Bible is the source of our regulation and the borders, look how cringe and this guy is. Take a look.
Ainsley, if you open up your Bible, God granted Abraham this land. The 12 tribes of Israel established the constitutional monarchy 1000 BC. King David was their second king and established Jerusalem as the capital. Jews were fighting foreign occupiers for centuries, ultimately maintaining a presence there. But the key aspect, and right now, Palestinians, Arabs, Muslims are trying to erase the Jewish ties to Jerusalem as we speak. I've been there multiple times. They're trying to make it look like Jews were never there. The most important aspect of this is the international community granted sovereignty to the Jews, to the Jewish state after World War II. And Israel has had to fight defensive war after defensive war, with every country coming to crush it ever since then, just to exist.
You know, if you really analyze his tone and how he speaks, it's like so defensive in a way that you feel like he's talking about someone who is part of his family and defending someone so passionately, you know, that the Arabs do not want the Jews. They don't recognize the presence of the Jews. Who said that? Seriously, in every history book that we read in the Middle East, we know that the Jews had a presence and still have a presence in the region. Who said that they don't recognize that before that there were Jewish people in different parts of the Middle East? Of course, until this moment, the indigenous Jews, but the Jews are not only in the Middle East. Jews from Russia to the United States, all over the world, right? There are different types of groups of Jewish people, some of which are coming from Poland. They have no roots in the Middle East, like some coming from Russia, some coming from Ukraine, some coming from Germany, from the United States. They don't have roots in the Middle East. Of course, the indigenous people, the Jews or Christians or Muslims, some people, they were Jews and then they converted. I mean, Christians also. They were Christians in the Middle East, then they converted. And I will tell you this, like when the Islamic conquerors came, they gave the choice for the people to either convert to Islam or pay more taxes. So the reason why they paid more taxes, and I'm not making any justifications, I don't want to pay now taxes more, for example, if I live as a Christian in an Islamic country, which I don't, because in Syria we don't have such systems, but I'm talking historically, right? But if you pay more taxes as a Christian and you keep your religion, or as a Jew, then you don't go to the army. You don't serve in the army. So the Muslim forces, they're the ones responsible to protect you. So for you not to go to the army, you pay more taxes, right? Now, this is not the case. Like Christians, Jews, or Muslims, or Yazidis, or agnostics, or atheists, they all go to the army, right? So this discussion is so absurd in the US, and we don't really hear about these things in the Middle East. They just project and create narratives that do not really exist in our region. And realities, parallel realities, basically. They are speaking to certain crowd and certain community and certain, you know, people who are interested in this topic and think in a specific way. So he's directing his talking points to these people, not to the people in the Middle East, and not to the Jewish people in the Middle East, basically. And it's really when I watched his videos, I felt like he's part of a cult, you know. And this is something like our friend Daniel McAdams. He's the executive director of Ron Paul Institute. He said, President-elect Donald Trump designated Secretary of Defense is a certifiable lunatic, a cultist in the manner of Manson, literally someone who needs to be in a mental hospital, who craves an apocalyptic war to end all of mankind so that his twisted understanding of God will come down and slaughter all, including Jews, who do not convert to his cult's beliefs. This is a truly dangerous person. This is the person running our military machine. The madman have taken the asylum. Take a look, like seriously, this is in Jerusalem. Basically, he's giving a speech in one of the hotels, the King David Hotel of Jerusalem, basically. And look what he has to say.
But we are here in Jerusalem, and today Jennifer and I and others had a chance to go see the Western Wall of the Temple Mount, the Western Wall tunnels, so much of the old city. And as you stand there, you can't help but behold the miracle before you. And it got me thinking about another miracle that I hope all of you don't see too far away. Because 1917 was a miracle, 1948 was a miracle, 1967 was a miracle. 2017, the declaration of Jerusalem as the capital was a miracle. And there's no reason why the miracle of the reestablishment of the temple on the Temple Mount is not possible.
Excuse me. So he's basically advocating for the destruction of Al-Aqsa Mosque and the construction and the building of the third temple. And this necessarily means the day of the judgment, or the Armageddon, is going to come and most people will die, including the Jews. So it's the end of the days. This is what he is preaching for. This is the guy who has taken over the DOD in the US. And worst still, look, because we're speaking about people who say they are America first, right? This guy is not America first. This guy is Israel first. And he was giving a speech, and he was asked, or during his speech, he said, "What can Israel learn from America?" You need to reverse that question. The question is, what can America learn from Israel?
When I came here, a lot of people asked me, a couple of people this morning in a press conference, what can Israel learn from America? Was asked a couple of times. And each time I stopped and I said, you need to reverse that question. The question is, what can America learn from Israel?
So if you're an American, if you're an American and you're a MAGA supporter, today I had some discussions with friends who are MAGA supporters, and they're very respectable people. They're accepting my criticism, but sometimes we have this disagreement. They're still hopeful that Trump is going to be different this time, and he's not going to pursue neocon and Zionist foreign policies and take the country to war for Israel. If you're an American and you're following this lashing, I'm really interested genuinely about your opinion. When you see such videos of the chief of the DOD now, who says things like this, and he puts Israel above the United States, because by saying that the Americans must learn from the Israelis indicate that the Israelis are above the Americans in their knowledge and in their approach or in their policies, right? This guy is a very dangerous guy. And this guy is going to be in the position of taking the United States to war with Donald Trump, especially with Iran. And just to refresh our memories, this was after the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, the chief of the Iranian Al-Quds force, whose battalion participated in the acts of war against ISIS in Iraq and Syria, and also Al-Qaeda. And Trump assassinated him. So right after the assassination, he said on Fox News that Trump has to bomb Iran's energy production facilities, ports, and nuclear facilities. He also said Trump should even bomb mosques, hospitals, and schools if deemed necessary. So this is the guy going to be the defense minister of the United States. Let's take a look.
Sometimes you have moments, Steve, and I happen to believe that we can't kick the can down the road any longer in trying to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear bomb. They used the killing of Soleimani as an excuse to say, we're scrapping the Iran deal. We all know they were scrapping it anyway. So what better time than now to say, we're starting the clock. You've got a week. You've got X amount of time before we start taking out your energy production facilities. We take out key infrastructure. We take out your missile sites. We take out nuclear development.
That is not a popular idea.
Capabilities. Or take out a Quds headquarters while you're at it if you want. I understand that's not a popular idea.
But I understand, I've been hearing that we believe that the Iranians are hiding missiles and weapons in some of these cultural sites, churches,
of course they do.
Mosques.
This is what Islamists do. It's what they've done on the battlefield against folks like me and my entire generation. Human shields, using mosques, using hospitals, schools. This is what our enemies do. Now that doesn't mean we go on and target cultural sites, but what it means is we are clear-eyed about how our enemies use the rules that we write against us. And if we want to defeat them, this is something, having seen it, if we want to defeat them, we have to think smart about how these rules, how we navigate within these rules without playing in a game that's rigged to help them so that we can't win. If we're going to fight to prevent Iran from getting a nuclear bomb, this regime, then we need to rewrite the rules that are advantageous to us. I don't want to hit cultural sites on purpose, but if you're using one to harbor your most dangerous weapons, then that should be on the target list.
How stupid is it to think that cultural sites are harboring nuclear weapons? He wants to target mosques, he wants to target cultural centers, and he's talking like a lunatic, right? And it's some of our commentators said that's a terrorist, and that's something that I was speaking to a friend the other day, that the media and Hollywood and all these productions that we see on TV, they have created the perception and they created stereotypes in our minds, even myself, right? Like when you see someone wearing beautiful suit with this tie and on Fox News, and he's well shaved and he just came from the barber, that you would think that this guy cannot be a terrorist, right? But he's calling for terrorism, basically. What he said basically is an act of terrorism against a sovereign country. But if somebody has a torpedo over his head and he looks like from a Middle Eastern country, or has a longer beard, or he has some Islamic religious, let's say, turbans over his head, then that's the terrorist, even if this person is calling for peace, because this is the image they created in our minds, in our brains for a long time. Even myself, by the way, sometimes I fall into this trap, because this is what we were fed for a long time, and it's difficult to detox your brain from these stereotypes. And the solution for it is, one of the solutions is not to really have any all these TV outlets and advertisement and entertainment, Netflix, Amazon Prime, and all this stuff. Or I don't know, there are so many. I don't have any membership to these things, and I don't watch any news outlets, Fox or CNN. I only follow on X and see what are the interesting things per day, and I come here and comment about them. But despite that, I still have these stereotypes sometimes in my head. So imagine if you are someone who is so indoctrinated and ideologically driven like him, like a cult. How would you think and how would you act when you are in a position of power? This guy is a very, very dangerous guy, guys. I think that this is going to be horrible for the region. And this guy was in occupied Palestine among the settlers in 2016. And he basically endorses also settlements, because he doesn't believe in a Palestinian statehood. He believes in the extermination of the Palestinians. He believes that all the Palestinian territories has to become part of Israel. And this was himself in 2016 in one of the settlements, or among the settlers in West Bank.
Fantastic. I'll be honest, before coming to Hebron, I didn't truly understand the depth of significance. Both historically, I mean, biblically, I understood in a basic sense, but when you see it physically, when you see it for real in front of you, you realize the significance. You go inside and you realize the contention ongoing, where Jews can go and where they can't go. And then you walk outside and you see the entire city of Hebron, and you realize that it's effectively surrounded. It's a massive city besieging this one incredibly holy site of Judaism. As was said to me, this is the root of Judaism, which my good friend here gave me, and I'm going to use going forward. It's true, and I commend the courageous community that maintains the heritage here. So thanks for having me.
We welcome our dear guests, and we are happy to share our idea and our vision with many guests from all over the world who believe in the cause of justice and the cause of defeating the terror, which is, it's possible. Mm-hmm. This is what we show here. We return to the source of Judaism, the place where Arab terrorists had destroyed an innocent Jewish community. And this is the place to show that terror shall not win. We are here back. We return to the town. We raise children here, and we call to peace to our neighbors. Can you imagine? This is the house I live, and this is a house where Arab neighbors live, friendly. It's possible. We say hello to each other. We have no fence. We have no wall. Mm-hmm. Once we know what we do here, they know as well. Mm-hmm. This is the story of Hebron, the most ancient Jewish historical site in history, 4,000 years of Jewish history. And we are happy and proud to continue it. And we are happy to have you here as dear guests to share this idea and will help us continue.
Thank you.
First of all, he called the Arabs, he said Arab terrorists, and then he wants to live in peace with his neighbors in, I don't know which building he was pointing to, maybe the people who they kicked them out from their home recently. And these settlements basically are not settlements for them. They're just communities, and they have a history because the book says so 3,000, 4,000 years ago. So they are going to conquer it and kick the people out. And I don't really want to make any diplomatic talk about this. I mean, I'm not someone who is new in this, and I don't think that they want to live peace side by side with the Arabs or the Palestinians. They want to have their own country completely, and without the Arabs, those peasants and terrorists that they see them like below them. That's how they see the people, and they have the backing of the most powerful country in the world, the US. And these politicians, yesterday when I made a stream and I said, it doesn't matter if it's Pompeo or Nikki Haley, because there will be people who act like Mike Pompeo and Nikki Haley. I mean, excluding them from the new administration means nothing, because if you are part of the establishment, then you have been groomed, right? And you're being groomed, and you started ascending from the bottom of the hierarchy, and you're going up. And in order to reach to the top of the hierarchy, one of the things that you have to do is to be unconditionally pro-Israel. And you have to pay visits to Israel, and you have to praise Israel, and you have to make compliments for Israel, and you have to support the Israeli settlement communities there, and you have to network with them in order to get the endorsement of the Israeli lobby in the US and try to ascend in your career. This is the way up, you know? So sometimes I really wonder if these politicians believe, American politicians believe what they say. Were they indoctrinated, groomed, or it's just an opportunistic? I don't know. Sometimes it gets confusing for me, you know? I'm going to show you one last video for the next Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. So this is his profile, guys. Just a second. Meet Trump's pick for Secretary of Defense. Hegseth is known for his staunch neocon views and deep ties to pro-Israel funding sources, including Paul Singer, the Koch brothers, and Sheldon Adelson, all with major investments in Israel. In 2024, Miriam Adelson, Sheldon's widow, contributed $100 million to Trump's campaign. Hegseth has called Zionism and Americanism the front lines of Western civilization, and praised Trump for his support of Israel, including moving the U.S. embassy to Jerusalem and recognition of the Syrian Golan Heights as part of Israel. In 2013, if you remember, guys, Obama wanted to bomb Syria after the hoax of the chemical attacks in Ghouta, which were carried out by back then a Turkish and Saudi-backed terrorist group, to accuse the Syrian government and invite an American foreign intervention. And the British and the American intelligence basically warned Obama that this was not done by the Syrian government or Assad, but basically were done by these terrorists in Syria. They were in the suburbs of Damascus. They used sarin gas, and they killed many civilians in a false flag operation to accuse the Syrian government. And Obama came to bomb Syria, and then the intelligence warned him, so he backed off. He said that the Congress has to vote and agree, this and that. And during this time, when Obama decided not to bomb Syria, Hegseth came and said, he wrote basically an article and said that he felt humiliated when Obama chose not to strike Syria, saying that it shows U.S. weakness. Take a look when he's trying to draw parallels or correlation between Zionism and Americanism.
Anyone that wants to take the stage and talk about dual loyalty is dead wrong. What this organization represents, what Western civilization represents today, is an understanding that Zionism and Americanism are the front lines of Western civilization and freedom in our world today. And what better time for that relationship? From the scrapping of the terrible Iran deal to the embassy move, the recognition of Jerusalem as the capital of the Jewish state, and the recognition of the Golan Heights. This president is a true friend of the state of Israel. It is an eternal bond an unbreakable bond that represents faith and freedom and fidelity to historic, religious, and cultural traditions, the opposite of secularism and Islamism and anti-Semitism. I don't want to be Jeb Bush, but it's okay to clap. Just kidding.
I don't know. These people are nut jobs, and they scare me and terrify me. And I don't know how many people still can't see where is this headed toward. It's going to be very bad news for the Middle East. It's going to be very bad news for Iran. It's going to be bad news for even the allies of the US, because now Trump is going to pressure and lobby and pressure his allies to side with the US in a potential war against Iran. And Saudi Arabia and the UAE do not want that. And so I hope that the Arabs have any plans, and this is something that I'm not really hopeful of. The Arabs usually just watch what's happening and then they react to the initiatives of the US and Israel in the region, the unfortunate truth about it. But I'm hopeful really that this time the leaders of the Arab world would say no to the US in case of initiating a war against Iran. My suspicion is the idea of war against Iran is very unpopular in the US, even among the MAGA supporters, so they need a trigger. Again, call me a conspiracy theorist, but if the American press keeps talking about this so-called plan of Iran to assassinate Trump, which is a complete block, if the FBI says this, then I think that there are people in the US who would carry out such an attempt again against Trump, or probably successful this time. And if Trump is targeted, injured, or killed, assassinated, then they would have a perfect excuse to mobilize the MAGA supporters around one flag and against the Iranians. I think that would be the convenient way to sell a war against Iran. Let's see. Because I don't see the MAGA supporters want to go to war against Iran or any other country for the moment. Now we have another appointee, guys. The Trump picked ultra anti-China hawk John Ratcliffe as the CIA director. Brian says, worst of all, this swamp creature already participated in the previous Trump administration. So the top US intelligence official says China is the greatest threat to democracy and freedom since World War II. Writing in the Wall Street Journal, John Ratcliffe said China was growing its power by stealing US secrets and then replacing US firms in the market. The Trump administration has taken a hard line on China, imposing tariffs on Chinese goods and accusing Beijing of intellectual property theft. As the US proxy war in Ukraine collapses, the US is pivoting to a larger and more dangerous confrontation with China. This was already happening under the Biden administration and will continue without pause under Trump. I've seen also a video of the new Secretary of Defense of the US, and he said something about China as well. And so the head of the CIA, he is a very anti-Chinese war hawk, but the new chief of the DOD, Pete Hegseth, says China's hypersonic missiles can destroy all the US aircraft carriers in 20 minutes. In every war game conducted by the Pentagon, the US loses to China. I hope this would be a deterrent. This is why I said the people have to have some deterrence against the US.
All of its war games against China, we lose every time inside the Pentagon war games. We know what our real capability. You see, we didn't even get to this part of the war on warriors. I mean, the military-industrial complex, the way we procure weapon systems. We're always, the way our system works, the way our bureaucratic system works, where the speed of weapons procurement works, we're always a decade behind in fighting the last war. Whereas China, we have, what did Rumsfeld say? You go to the war, the army you have. We have the army. China's building an army specifically dedicated to defeating the United States of America. That is their strategic outset. Take hypersonic missiles. So if our whole
if our whole power projection platform is aircraft carriers and the ability to project power that way strategically around the globe. And yeah, we have a nuclear triad and all of that, but a big part of it. And if, 15 hypersonic missiles can take out our 10 aircraft carriers in the first 20 minutes of a conflict, all of its war games.
So according to him, the Chinese side can take out the entire aircraft carriers of the US through Chinese hypersonic missiles in 20 minutes. In every war game conducted by the Pentagon, the US loses to China. So this is the deterrence that I mentioned, that these countries have to have economic independence, economic integration with like-minded countries, and also interested, of course, and parallel financial systems, de-dollarization, and deterrence. Deterrence is very important because the US empire is based on power projection. This is the chief of the DoD. Some people really think like I'm paranoid or I'm anti-America. I'm not an anti-America. I'm anti the enforced dominance of the US on the rest of the world, right? And one of the ways the US enforces its dominance around the world is these aircraft carriers. They're intimidating countries all around the world, encircling countries, blocking trade routes, maritime trade routes. They are sending many of these aircraft carriers to Far East Asia to encircle China. They're doing similar things around Iran. They're doing similar things around in the Black Sea. So in the Mediterranean, always they have this appetite for intimidating countries. Every time there is some conflict or some disagreements with the US, they send their aircraft carriers, and at the same time some of the diplomat is flying in the sky and coming to this country and telling them. So those are the dictates, or the aircraft carrier is already in the regional waters. This is how the American empire operates. Now, Trump also appointed, guys, the former governor of Arkansas, Mike Huckabee. He has become the US ambassador to Israel. And this guy is another complete nut job, just for you to know. So his famous, one of his famous sayings, Mike Huckabee, there is no such thing as the Palestinians. Mike Huckabee, Palestinian state is a fantasy. Huckabee, US should fund building in Judea and Samaria. Mike Huckabee considers buying a home in Judea and Samaria. Mike Huckabee declares West Bank to be part of Israel during settlement visit. Huckabee, Israel's claim to Judea and Samaria stronger than US tie to Manhattan. Congratulations. Congratulations for your America First foreign policy. Very, very America First foreign policy. This is him with flesh and blood declaring. So this is him, Mike Huckabee, the incoming US ambassador to Israel. This video is from 2017. He says there is no such a thing as the West Bank, it's Judea and Samaria. There is no such a thing as settlements. They are communities, they are neighborhoods, they are cities. There is no such thing as an occupation.
My feelings personally, and I'm speaking only as a person, I think Israel would only be acting on the property it already owns. I think Israel has title deed to Judea and Samaria. There are certain words I refuse to use. There is no such thing as a West Bank. It's Judea and Samaria. There's no such thing as a settlement. They're communities, they're neighborhoods, they're cities. There's no such thing as an occupation.
That they get out of their minds that people are living in lean-tos, tents, sleeping in cars, circled around a tree. They're living in very well-designed and beautiful cities and communities. Can't wait to get back. I'm going to take an extra hat. I'm going to get it to President-elect Trump. Build Israel great again. Who knows? We may see him wear this out there in one of his rallies somewhere. I don't know. Can't promise that. I can only promise he will get a copy of the hat. Thank you very much.
So when you watch such videos, do you really think that these people are convinced of what they say? Are they ideologically convinced? Or they are, careerists, opportunistics? Really, it's a really serious question. I would like to know your opinion about this. Finally, this is the US ambassador to the UN. Before she even met with Donald Trump after her appointment, she met with the president of Israel. She says, this morning I met with my good friend, Israeli President Isaac Herzog. We discussed the need to continue the fight against anti-Semitism and President Donald Trump's record as the strongest American president in history when it comes to standing with Israel. It has never been more important to stand with our most precious ally and return to President Trump's America First peace through strength foreign policy. They still keep talking about America first. She didn't even meet with Trump yet. She met with the president of Israel after her appointment. So, and all these people, guys, there is a monster inside these people for not caring about the people. I'm serious. This is not only about careerism. I think there is a monster inside every one of them who call for the escalation in the region, more wars, and do not really show any empathy and sympathy with the Palestinians who are murdered, with tens of thousands of them, and ethnically cleansed and lost their homes, and babies are killed, and mothers, pregnant mothers, are completely slaughtered, and they are giving birth without any sanitation or without hospitals, and this situation is incredibly dire. And in northern Gaza, even the Haaretz says that there's an ethnic cleansing, and Israeli forces are not allowing the civilians to come back to their homes in northern Gaza. So I think they're monsters, and there are so many testimonies that they can watch and see and learn, and I'm sure that they know what's happening in Palestine and they don't care. This is Professor Nizam Mahmoudeh. So he broke down as he was telling the stories of systematic and persistent targeting of civilians and kids, basically by Israeli drones, immediately after they drop bombs on areas of civilian population living in tents. So for those who want to learn, really, the material is there, the evidence is there, the investigation is there, and the testimony of the experts are there. Take a look what he has to say.
What I think I found particularly disturbing was that a bomb would drop maybe on a crowded, tented area, and then the drones would come down and...
Please take your time. We're incredibly grateful that you're making the time to be here today, and I can only imagine just how it has impacted you and will continue to impact you. And I feel, because you can't unsee what you've seen, but being able to share that with us really helps us hold legislators particularly to account. So we do appreciate the time that you're making for us today. Thank you.
So the drones would come down and pick off civilians, children. And we had description after description. This is not, an occasional thing. This was day after day after day, operating on children who would say, I was lying on the ground after a bomb had dropped, and this quadcopter came down and hovered over me and shot me. And that's clearly a deliberate act, and it was a persistent act, persistent targeting of civilians day after day. We had 1 or 2 mass casualty incidents every day.
So for those who want to learn and know, the material is there. The material is there, and the warning of the experts were there before the election of Trump. Please, look, if you want to vote for Trump because you don't want to see wokeism in your country or open borders or many other domestic issues, I don't really mind. Just say the truth about it. But coming and telling me that Trump is America First foreign policy, I think the evidence suggests otherwise, and the evidence is overwhelming now. So if anyone tells you that Trump is going to be America First now, he's a liar. He's a liar. It's impossible. He's a sellout. He's someone who is paid by the Trump PR team, or he's completely on the side of Trump, whatever Trump says, because he doesn't have an integrity, and he was just like pretending to be against wars, and now he's going to be in the same wagon with Trump if he goes to war against Iran. This is something that I slightly disagree with Brian Barletic, that he believes that the Americans will try to freeze a war in Ukraine in order to focus on China. I think that the focus will be on Iran, not China. China is already too big and too dangerous for them to confront in a military with military tools. This is just my opinion. I might be wrong, Brian. We are on the same side. It's the same analysis. I just believe that the focus will be on Iran and not on China. And by hurting Iran, they believe that they could hurt China immensely and their energy business games in the region, and also their Silk Road initiative. This is how I think that the American planners think that they can contain China. But I think as we say, the bus has already left the station, and these three countries, China, Russia, and Iran, are coming closer and closer together. And it is only a matter of time to see military defensive pacts between these three countries, similar to the pacts that Russia and North Korea have striked. I think one is going to be singularly signed between China and Iran and Russia, in order to protect each other and immunize themselves against. So if there is a future defensive pact between Iran and China, or Iran and Russia, I don't think that Iran will need a nuclear weapon in this case. Scott Ritter says, America, we just found the price of a president. Miriam Adelson bought Donald Trump for a cool $100 million. Best investment Israel ever made. Worst sellout in American history. I don't know. Like I really liked Scott, and I respect him a lot. But he was bashing people for. I saw him bashing people for criticizing Trump before his re-election. On X, I was surprised that he was very aggressively defending Donald Trump in some of the pages. I don't know now. Maybe I don't think that he didn't know. I mean, this is very clear that Donald Trump's team was funded also with $100 million before he formed his new cabinet. So this was all for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning into today's live streaming. If you like this content, hit the like button. That is a great help for me. And check if you're subscribed. 40% of the viewers of Syriana Analysis aren't subscribed. It would be a great help to me and support and boost for this channel when you subscribe to my work. And if you like to support the independent work I'm doing, you can become a patron. The link is scrolling on the screen. Patreon.com/Syriana Analysis, and I will see you tomorrow, Thursday, 5 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. Eastern American Time. Peace be upon you guys and upon your families. Salam.